Hey Google, who is the Weights for Mates co-founder and the kick-ass coach at Training Day Gym? We've got Josh Balia here. How you going, man?
Good, man.
Is it Balia or Balia?
Balia.
Balia.
Some people say Balia.
Josh Balia.
Yeah.
Where's that? What's that from? Where's that from?
My dad's Anglo-Indian.
Yeah.
And then my mum's Lebanese, but it comes from my dad's
So that's
side.
where you got that nice olive.
Always tanned in the sun for 30 minutes and tanned.
Dude, you're jacked, man.
A little bit. I got fatter, as I said.
No, you're jacked.
I got a little fatter. There's put on a little bit of weight.
Comfortable? You got comfortable?
Yes.
Yeah.
There's I'm prepping for a comp again.
Are you?
So I had hip surgery last year, 1st of March, and then which I got very, very skinny. I think I was seen about 74.
I remember you said I thought that was for your knee. I didn't know it was
my hip. Yeah, I'm an old man.
Wow, what happened?
I tore the ligament in my hip. Had to refit the femur. There was bone overgrowth as well, so they shaved that down. Had fluid, labral tear, so they had to do pretty much a partial reco.
Shit.
Within the hip. Yeah.
Well, why did this come on?
Part of it, there's a condition called dysplasia, so the actual congruency of my hip wasn't, which they usually screen as kids, as babies, but that was never picked up. And then second, so I've always had hip issues growing up.
Wow.
And then couple in with all the training in the background and comps and high loads, and it's too much eventually for my hip to handle.
How did you find it? How did you discover that you had to get this done?
I couldn't walk properly without pain. Yeah, I was probably sitting about 3 to 4 out of 10 pain. I actually went to Japan at that, it would have been maybe a month before I had hip surgery, and I'm looking at these like cliffs or mountains that we're trying to climb up the stairs, and I was like, I can't actually walk that without pain. And
wow.
It got that
so
bad.
It was a subtle pain, but it was constant.
Originally, I was squatting one night, and midway through that squat down the bottom, I felt it go and finished that set, and I was like, oh no, I've done something.
Yeah.
After I looked at that, trying to rehab it a bit, we spent 6 months rehabbing it.
Really? 6 months?
Yeah, 6 months, because I didn't want to have an op just yet, because I was still young. And then I got to Japan, and I was like, we now have to get this surgery. I can't walk without pain. You could feel my femur and articulated on the outside, and it was just gross. Because the ligament was torn, the femur was slightly shifting in the socket, and it was just quite uncomfortable by that stage. So surgery was one of the best things I did with it. Actually, it was a good little refresh. And
how long have you been since that surgery?
So that was 1st of March last year, so 2019, and then I was meant to have 2 weeks. Couldn't drive, couldn't work, nothing like that.
Wow.
I went back to work in a week because I was going nuts.
Yeah.
Just staying at home. Actually, they set up to about 10 months recovery time.
10 months.
Yeah. Within 6, I think I was back in the gym within about, I think the 3rd week. I was leaving my crutches in the car and going to training.
You're an overachiever.
Nuts. Nuts, as they say. And then I just couldn't stay at home. I wanted to do something.
Yeah.
Which I'm glad I did. And then probably, I reckon about the 3-month mark, we were loading weights again properly.
Wow.
Which was nice.
Did they say 10 months recovery time because that's the procedure for people out of an older age?
That's what it'd be based off. I remember being in the actual in the hospital. Is it just off Blackburn Road, and in the waiting bay, and then they give you a bed, and the guy comes in. He's like, "You're literally a third of the age of everyone who's actually getting your surgery. Like, what happened? Do you have a motorbike accident?" I'm like, "No." So there's. Yeah, it definitely, that point of time, it would have been based off people who were like 80, 90. Old lady.
Which makes sense if they recover for the recovery time to be a lot longer.
Yeah, so, well, also because they shave down the bone, it's like a baby bone again. So if I snap it, or I'm at risk of actually breaking that and fracturing that bone, and then I have a longer period where I end up back having to get surgery again.
How much did they shave off?
No idea. enough to make me not want to walk for a couple of days.
It'd be interesting to see the like an X-ray.
Yeah.
Did you get that?
We have scans after, and because you then have your post-op appointments, and after that you see how like they've kind of fitted the femur back in and how it sits in the socket. You look at the actual scan and that's a lot better. So and also all the inflammation around the femoral head is like the femur is
there's that
flies
fly.
come back. For those that don't know, Nick was clapping around chasing this fly past 10 minutes, but we're back.
Dude, tell everyone that's watching or listening, tell us who you are. Let's get that happening so people see what or understand what amazing human you are.
Yeah, so amazing. Thank you. Too kind, Nick. But basically, I'm one of the co-founders to a social enterprise called Weights for Mates. Now, Weights for Mates used exercise as a conduit to then address mental health within young men. We look at topics such as anxiety, depression, suicide intervention, and then we're coaching those boys basically how to help their mates with issues of such. So that round started working in like 2016, 2017 November it launched. And then we've run workshops all the way through, and then ran personal training for kind of youth at risk as well. Some people on the high risk scale, some people very low risk, and we just try to set up a community and environment around that. Second to that, I work at Training Day as well. I'm coach there and full time there as well.
It's a massive gym, right?
Yeah, huge gym, good people, good place, great equipment, and that's that. They initially, I came to Training Day. They actually offered the space up for rent, or no rent, sorry, to just use for Weights for Mates at their Burwood facility. And then that obviously turned into, I ended up coaching there as well. And then they opened up Clayton facility, and we've been able to house it within there over the last couple of years and do our thing with good support from them. So, and Wayne, who owns Training Day, has been a great mentor along the way. And so that's, it's worked out perfectly. And then in the background, I did exercise science and psychology as well. I'm finishing that off as a undergrad, so almost done. And
you deadlift like a crazy man.
Yeah, let's say crazy. I previously I used to compete for powerlifting. Now coming back to it, but yes, we.
How long do you think until you compete?
I was planning for April actually this year.
Is that wise, or are you?
Body's feeling pretty good.
Yeah.
Training's coming back in, and to be honest, it's like another full-time job. Training. So that's kind of come back in. Looking at the 5th of April or end of March comps, we'll see. And then take a bit of time off after that, and just enjoy training again. Let the hip handle what it can handle. We've had enough injuries over the past 5 years, so. You just build it back up, be a bit smarter each time. If I can do that comp, great. If I can't and have to pull back on the body, okay. You can't really be tied to it. Your identity can't be a part of it. So that's kind of where it is now. And a little brief background of my life.
Nice. You guys. So the way we met was I was training at your gym. A different one. And then we just started talking about charities.
I found out that you went to Care Package.
How did you know?
I think you told me one day. You were just talking
on the treadmill. It's on the row.
On the row, and Nick.
I used to murder that row.
Yeah, Nick would come in and just smash out the roller, and we'd be talking as he did it in his rest time. He'd go again, and you let me know that you ran a charity. I was like, we're kickstarting one at that point in time. I think Weights for Mates was just in development then. So. I was like, that's kind of cool. And then I'd leave late and I'd see your car still at your office, and this guy works hard as well.
Bloody hell.
Yeah, you're working, 16-hour days back there, something like that, 16, 18-hour days.
Crazy.
Yeah, I remember. I think that's actually how we got along.
Yeah.
I was like,
because you work hard. You're a hard worker.
Yeah.
You work yourself to the ground.
I think that's kind of all I've known since growing up. So I actually don't find the working hard's the easy part. If anything, sometimes it can be a bit of a escape as well.
Yeah.
Productivity becomes your lifeline in other areas. So
because it's something you can control.
Yes. Yeah. And it's something as a kid I've just learned to do. If something goes wrong, you go work yourself out of it. So there's nothing else you can do besides sit there and be sorry. It keeps you busy, keeps you distracted, keeps you in line. They're good things to have in your toolbox.
I love that you said that. So I find that entrepreneurs, and I think that you definitely are, right? You've got that mindset for sure. It's these tools that you learn as a kid. Like you just said, you used to work yourself out of problems. Like how can we have a different mindset to a lot of people, and I think that's it's important to understand because you can problem solve, and once I think business is just problem solving every day, every hour.
Yeah, and things go wrong. I think that actually those skill sets starts when things go wrong. When people are kind of thrown in a deep end and you have your kind of crisis and you have everything, all your structures, all your foundations completely broken, and you kind of have to rebuild it and remodel it and just to kind of survive. And I think. I guess anecdotally, the more people I've seen in trauma situations or with really tough upbringings are usually the ones who are coping and very resilient in life now. You kind of develop grit as you go along.
Yeah.
So, and most of them will tell you that they haven't been through shit and they completely deny what they've gone through. And then you hear their background and you're like, well, it's actually pretty heavy and that's pretty tough. But that's just life for them. So anyone who kind of has that background, or some people are born with it, some people are genetically, let's say, kind of built with that resilience, and then some people are forced to build that resilience. So it's dependent on one, I guess, where you are, who your parents are, what background you come from, what your environment is, how you grow up. It starts all the way in developmental years. The earlier you start, I think the better off you are as we get kind of into adulthood. And
you mean like
life.
dealing with crap?
Yeah. It's fun. There's kids who are handling issues as if they're 20, 30, 40 years old. And they're realistically just kids. And those kids, when they actually grow up and they're 20, 30, 40 years old, they're doing crazy shit. They're doing insane stuff. Most people can't even imagine. But it starts somewhere. Something always ticks the box. There's always something there that kind of builds those tools. And that's kind of where it starts.
I know you speak to some people and they say, oh, I just did this, or like I just like something really bad, something really traumatic happened, and they talk about it like it's nothing. And I'm like, oh, there's so much pressure. Like, they don't even realize their coping mechanisms are through the roof. Like they don't realize like there's things you can let go, right? Because for them, they just brush it off. Like so used to these high pressure situations, or they deal with them very well.
And some people love them as well. I genuinely think if I didn't have stress in my life, I'd be mental. I wouldn't know what to do with myself. And I think some people chase that as well because you kind of learn off it. You thrive in it. And some people are just like that. You have the other end where people always have different coping mechanisms, and they'll compartmentalize, or they'll detach, or they'll block it out, and they just have to keep on going. So you have different facets that people develop to deal, different coping mechanisms. But yeah, you're spot on. There's people who tell you a whole lot of stuff and just like, yep, that's their day for the day. That's normal to them, and that's relative to everyone.
That's really crazy, isn't it?
It's cool. It's cool.
You have quite a fascinating story to tell about why you started Weights for Mates. So can you just tell these people a little bit more about Weights for Mates, like what it is that it does? I know you gave it a brief introduction, but let's dive into it because I think it's an important organization to have around.
So in essence, it was a preventative measure towards, let's say, end stage like suicide, and we're addressing it on the level of where does that start, where does that fester, and usually it starts within relationships with other people in your environment. It starts with anxiety, depression, things that, where does that start? We're trying to be preventative to that, and we believe if you can, to prevent that, you have to kind of equip someone with kind of a whole assault of tools to deal with it, and many blokes don't have the tools to actually deal with that, or let alone use it when a pressure situation happens. So in essence, we have a cycling board who run the workshops, and myself and Andrew, the other co-founder, run that as well. And we set up this little environment where we might run.
What age group are the people you
originally
train?
We started 16 and 25. 16 is kind of your cutoff because really you don't have. We look at brain development and people who understand irrational thinking. It doesn't really start till we're hitting that and full development of what we call the frontal lobe. Realistically, you're looking more 20, 21. It's like people make stupid decisions when they're younger, right? We don't think rationally.
So the rationale starts developing after 16?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. When we actually look at brain development, we're looking at females a bit quicker than guys.
Why is that?
Just genetics, in a way. I don't completely know the answer. It's just what the literature says. So frontal lobe development can be up to 21 to 22, 23, and that helps with rational thinking. So we've kind of cut it off at 16, getting there early, also legally as well, like doing parent and guardian stuff like that. So,
okay.
But up to 25, that's expanded up to 30, really. It's a diverse range. We've hosted, I think, 13 workshops altogether across the board, and coaching's continued within training day throughout. You're basically being a supportive male figure within that individual's life. For blokes specifically, we wanted to work with a demographic of blokes first, purely because the suicide rate was through the roof. When we started, there was on average 2,500 suicides a year. 75% of those were men. Now we're looking at 3.5, something like that per year. Yeah, still with this basic rate of about 75%, which is nuts. Yeah. But then you look at why most people who are going to go and do that action aren't going to tell you, and blokes are notoriously bad at actually speaking up and talking, and there's a lot of stigma behind that, what actually involves in masculinity. And if you have an issue, usually the whole cultural system is that you deal with it yourself. You don't voice it, you don't air your dirty laundry, you don't and then what happens when you actually can't handle it? So we weren't coming from a place of just completely clinical, because there's already services like that. We refer to those clinical places, as psychologists especially. We're coming from a place of like, well, you have a couple of blokes who probably understand a fair bit and been through a bit, not everything, but enough to actually understand, or at least try to understand, and set up an environment where we can have those conversations, where you can kind of have a framework that facilitates those conversations. And that framework was really exercise. It was physical activity. It's a blokey thing to do. It's also women are doing it as well. We want to set something up for them, and support that demographic. But the first one was with men because of statistics.
Yeah.
But yeah, so.
And how many people have you helped so
far? Over 100. I don't actually know the full figure. I don't know, we've had over 100 through the workshops. Coaching, I'm going sort of throughout the years. I haven't quantified that yet. So fair few to say the least. So the biggest thing, it's funny because you might have however many numbers within a workshop, however many numbers you coach, but then what you have to look at within that is how many people reach out to you, how many messages you have, how many phone calls you have, how many like coffees or meetups or that. You become a resource very quickly outside of just that, which is still considered within that. That's what you do. That's what people know you for. That's why people are reaching out. But it puts you in other situations outside of just that gym. So
you'd be getting. I know that you at one point you were answering the phone at all hours of the night. Are you still doing that?
Yeah.
And that's to save someone's life. I mean, these people call you to, when they're on the verge.
Yeah, I reckon at one point I probably had a 3-month period where whatever was going on within the world, it was probably a last point call for a few people, and I was managing them and trying to help them through what they were battling at that point in time. And I guess that it taught me a lot of lessons. For one, taught me how to handle emotional stress, and also handle my own, because it's not an easy thing to handle, especially if you have investments in those people as well, which you build. But yeah, you do what you have to do.
Dude, what are some of the tools that you use to really like deal with your own shit? Because it's easy to fall into the trap of just like throwing yourself into other people's problems, but then you don't get to deal with your own shit. Yeah,
and that was a harsh lesson I actually learned, because it meant I was completely run down as well. And when you have nothing left emotionally, because you've given it, and rightfully so, I'll do that again in a second, then it's very hard to deal with your own shit at that point in time. You still have career stress, you still have relationship stress, and you have your own emotional stress from other things and tasks and children and whatever's in the background that sits in your head. I completely broke down with that, to be perfectly honest. I probably had to put the tools in place that I'd put for other people in place for myself. And it started by having to fill my own cup again. You can't give from an empty cup. And I think one of the best things that I did on that end, and that's why I said hip surgery was a good rehash, because it basically took everything off my plate. I'd just come back from Japan and I'd had a few issues with my old man in Japan, and that was when I was like, all right, shit's kind of hitting the fan in my own personal life. And And literally, I was in hospital overnight and didn't really sleep. Just listening to the podcast I listened to called by Eric Thomas called "How Bad Do You Want It?" Pretty popular one. And that's
what's it called? What is it?
How Bad Do You Want It?
Okay.
By Eric Thomas. Something I listened to the last 2012. I think 2011 I came into contact with that. 2012 maybe. I just had it on repeat, and I remember sitting in this hospital bed and just having to strip back my life and rebuild it. And then I had this week and where I couldn't move off the couch because of the hip, and where I was just pulling apart each, like resetting goals, writing down what was going through my head, these thoughts, and everything was stripped back on, and then I got to pile it back on. So you just kind of have to take a step back and how I mediate that now. Well, at that time, this was March, and things kind of hit the fan. And shit had crumbled, and I was having to build it back up. And I ended up going and training with my best mate Andrew, his other co-founder of Weights and Mates. And we were training at 5:30 in the morning again. Another mate of ours, Ferg, jumped in with us, and the three of us were training, and I was just enjoying going in, having a period of time, 1-2 hours where I could just work hard, and just not think. Headphones in, and as I was saying, I was leaving the crutches in the car and going in and training and doing just whatever I could. I didn't have expectations around like training goals because obviously couldn't. I had to do my rehab, and I just actually got to have time for myself, and that can manifest for a lot of other people in different ways. For me, it was what I knew. I've been doing this since I was 13. So, and now kind of how that is now, I actually take a fair bit of time to myself where I just drop off the map completely, phone away.
So important.
Yeah, like you go down to the pool, you're walking in the pool, and when your head's underwater, you can't think of anything else. You can't hear anything else, and inputs are taken off your plate.
Yeah.
And so it lets you.
Solid point.
Yeah. You just need to strip it back. And that's something like I'll start even now as things are coming onto my plate. I have to learn how to take things off to manage that. Otherwise, you just crumble. And so the phone has to go away a bit. My contact point with people have to go away a bit. And you just prioritize a few things.
Is it a case of like I don't see you as a people pleaser. Like I think you're a pretty straightforward kind of guy. So it's not that situation. Like you're not getting that on because you want people to like you.
No, not
you this is happening to you because there's just a lot of shit going on that people need you.
Yeah, and there's people. I'm pretty blunt with that, to be honest. I don't really care if someone doesn't like me. That's okay. I have my own values and I'll build that up. So it's definitely not people pleasing. There's I guess if you have a responsibility, you kind of got to fulfill it, even if it's not a responsibility you want to take. There's same goes in a professional setting. You know, if a doctor's in an event of an accident and he doesn't decide to go help when he's the one who qualified or able to, then who's liable? You know, can you live with that? Can you sleep at night? Maybe not. In my case, no. It ticks over my head.
You have a strong value set.
Yeah, it ticks over my head. And it's I've always kind of said if we don't do it, who will? So if everyone took the notion of someone else will do it for us, nothing will get done. So that's and to be frank, at the same time, if people trust me with certain things, then you appreciate that as well.
Yeah.
You built your character enough for someone to trust you to that degree. Don't abuse it ever. That's your responsibility now. So whether you like it or not. But yeah, kind of leaves us where we are.
You're a solid guy, man.
To an extent.
Shit.
To an extent. Yeah, it's just how it is. That's how life panned out.
Yeah. I know with my charity, so we're 5 years. This is going to be our 6th year. We like it's definitely taken a toll. It's taken an emotional toll. Every year it'll just chip away at me a little bit, just seeing like people on the streets and and it took a toll. Like last year it took a massive toll on me. I just, if it wasn't for Margaret, she was the one, she pulled the whole strings last year.
Yeah.
Margaret's the other co-member.
I said on the post.
She pulled all the strings. I just needed to be. I just couldn't do it. I just had too much on my plate.
You have to.
Like business stuff and like I would usually let my business drop down a bit, just to focus on the charity. But that's part bad on my side with not having proper systems in place.
Yeah.
But I had to take some time to reevaluate that stuff.
I remember actually when we were back at the gym and you're trying to get the fundraiser sorted and you're pulling out your hair and working late nights. I remember that completely. And there's actually, even for the last, let's say, year and a bit, Andrew and myself have had a lot of work on our side. And so as much as we want to be in the public eye with the charity and running those workshops and publicly, sometimes you have to take a step back.
Yeah.
And from when we started to where we are now, it's we're always looking at it, and there's so much more we can be doing. But at sacrifice to other things in your life as well. So there's I understand that completely. Sometimes you actually just have to take a step back, and that's completely okay. Because we can't let our identity be formed within this. If it doesn't run, then we're not devalued.
Exactly.
Lesson to be learned, but yeah, I understand that completely. And you were doing a lot. You were doing a lot.
There's just a lot of intricate things that we have to do as the founders. You know, that we can't pass on to other people. You know, because it's not their responsibility to do. Even if you have board members and all this stuff, it's just
you just got to roll your sleeves up and do it. And sometimes you need it elsewhere.
Yeah.
And it's just how the game is.
Exactly. Dude. Okay. Is there anything you want to talk about? Like anything?
I'm completely.
Is there anything we can't talk about? No. Okay.
No. There's go nuts.
Can I ask you about how your relationship started going a bit shit because of is that? Can we talk?
Yeah.
Are you still with her?
Yeah.
You're back with her?
Yeah.
You were seeing someone else. We're not adding this in.
No. Well, we split up twice. And we're back together. Same girl.
Why? Why'd you split up?
First time we split up, I couldn't handle.
Because she wasn't understanding of what you were doing. She didn't understand more so.
She understood. She just didn't condone it because I'd pull away even further.
Yeah.
There's I remember I was in exam period for uni. I was in Weights for Mates had just launched. Andrew, I think the biggest week I clocked up was 92 hours in that week. And
what?
Yeah, and Andrew was doing more than me, and I was looking at this guy running 80 to 100 every week. And,
shit.
And I was
just for.
He works in private equity funds management, and I was like, and I'm competitive, and I was like, if he's doing that, I have to do that. Like, I'm not putting in anything less. And
I value that in a person.
Yeah, I respect it.
Like I've had so many business things go sour because they weren't working as hard as I was working.
Yeah, and that is the one thing. There's and plain to say, I wasn't training as much then. Training even took a back seat, and then when training takes a back seat, everything was taken. The relationship was taken a back seat, and it simply I was pulling away on this kind of tunnel vision, like anything else, and when you pull away from someone, they still need time. You still need to give that attention. It's never going to work. So that was kind of the first breakdown, and it impacted me heavily after that. Got back involved, and then we hadn't fixed the stuff from the first time. It was just kind of it's almost insanity. You were hoping that would work without really changing any things.
How long were you together?
for a year, and then we split up for 3 months. Back involved. I think we had another 5 month stint, and we split up, and then it was 8 months. And actually, I had a very close friend of mine pass away last year, and he passed away, I believe, I think it was about end of April to early May. And when that happened, she got back in contact with me and had all this time just to check in and see how I was.
Oh, that's
kept
nice.
me on track. Yeah. She had a lot of respect for, plain and simple. And when he passed, kind of, it was probably in a pretty vulnerable state, and it was something I was handling by myself. I didn't really.
Plus all the other things.
Yeah, I remember I actually got the call about 2 minutes before I walked into work, and for whatever reason, I was able to take that call and find out that he'd passed, and toxicology results were coming back, and all that was going. And I walked into work 2 minutes later and didn't talk a word about it for another week and a half within that setting, until I had to take time off for the funeral for the next day on the Thursday. And I was simply not dealing with it. That was how I was going to deal with it. And that festers. That obviously. When you're left alone with your thoughts. Yeah. There's. I was working. I launched headfirst into work. I was working big days. like back to back to back, seeing 11, 12 clients in a day. Wasn't really deep, maybe train, that's about it. Training early, and I just did not deal with that at all, and it would come about in random bouts, and until that funeral happened, and even then you kind of shut it out after.
Yeah.
And I actually, and that's kind of how we got back into contact after. She was obviously could see through my shit of I'm coping, which I was showing to the whole world, but she could see through that. So
were you self-sabotaging?
I actually admittedly had a night where I think I opened a bottle of whiskey, and I ended up drinking half that bottle of whiskey just on my bedroom floor, and that was my coping mechanism one night. Just absolutely and I don't do that type of stuff, but yeah, self-sabotaging completely.
I can understand how that helps. I know people say don't do that, and I don't condone that. But I mean, I can understand like when it's a last resort, like something you just need to lose yourself for a little bit.
Yeah.
And like that's
it's an anesthetic completely, and I guess it also validated certain emotions, because then you're like obviously drunk as anything at that stage, and that was how I was kind of letting the walls down, and it was a terrible idea, a heavy hangover, and I don't actually usually drink. It's not my thing. Never really liked it, and there's that having that kind of breakdown was like, okay, these are pieces I'm gonna have to pick back up, and this is time that I need to go and spend with and work out and process, and I guess as well within that, so he passed by overdosing, and whether it was purposeful or not, there was a lot of things going on in the background, and 2 days before that, he was actually meant to check into rehab, and we'd had that conversation, and so there was, and I actually thought he was going to rehab, and we'd had this conversation. Basically, he was in tears over the phone, and about pretty much turning things around. And my exact words to him were, sometimes these things in life need to happen, so we're completely broken, and so we actually learned to actually turn this around, and he said he was going to rehab, and so there's that kind of conversation had played on echo in my head, and it was probably brought up one of the biggest fears of like your fear of failure, but fear of failure with the sense of losing someone, because for whatever reason you thought it was your responsibility, and you tried to take responsibility, and that was something I had to really address, because at the end of the day, you're going and helping all these other people, whether you like it or not, you are,
and the one person that you needed to help, you couldn't.
And that was on the cards for a while. With other people, that was on the cards for a while, and that was something that when that actually did happen, because there's always gonna one always slips through. You know, you're holding everyone, trying to hold yourself, and one slip that when that actually happens, you're like, okay, there's a complete breakdown of your whole model of life. You think you can not fix everything, but you think you can handle a fair bit, and you also think that everything's gonna be okay no matter what kind of happens. You always manage to get through. So when that outcome doesn't happen, completely, you have to review everything in yourself, and it's a good lesson in life. Like, that's the only permanent thing. The only thing we're actually given is we're gonna end up dead at one point of our life. And so it's like there's all this stuff now. Even when you look at with other like the death of Kobe and his daughter, and everyone's going to be reminded of the fact that life can be taken away like that. That was my reminder then, that life can be taken away like that, and so it's something that, to be honest, I've now kind of put into a phase of how do I find purpose for that, and it's gone in within I guess progressions in a relationship side, like the little shit that I used to hang on to, or would probably kick off, doesn't kick off because you have a sense of perspective there, it comes into a career side of like be grateful for what you actually have, and keep working the way we're doing, because if not harder, I think I roast myself when I'm not working hard enough, and put myself on blast for doing that, because I have an opportunity to do so and some people don't. So I may as well use it. If I don't, that's on me. But it was a good kick for like, what are you doing? You have so many things.
Yeah.
And that was it's a very sobering moment as well.
Fuck. It's that purpose thing. That's like, it's hard to find. Purpose is hard to find. Like we're so distracted by so many things. Like even reminders of like life is so short. It's still like, I know that plays on my mind all the time. And then it gives me that anxiety of saying like, I'm wasting my life.
Yeah.
And then you get stuck in that cycle of like, shit, I have to do something, or else I'm wasting my life. And then what's the purpose? And then it's just this vicious cycle of just negativity.
Yeah. And it builds up. It builds up. I think cutting that cycle is one of the best things you can do, though. Like we probably play on the end, and everyone has their little meltdown of like, I haven't done what I wanted to do, right? But we set those dreams and expectations when we're young, when we haven't actually got a glimpse of what life was. And now we're getting a glimpse of what reality is, and we've kind of got to remodel those expectations to it, you know. We say as a kid that we're going to be this and this and this at this age, and as the early 20s we say we're going to be this and this at this age, and when we actually get there, we don't know what the reality is till we get there, you know.
We don't know shit.
Yeah, at all.
We don't know shit. And people that when you look at people, you think they've got their life together, like they also don't know shit.
Yeah, and it's funny when people say, hey, like you're doing well, you have potential for this, and you look at them and you're like, I still don't know. Like I'm still in that place, and people be like, you like it for this, you like it for that, and you're like, I don't know completely. I don't know what you're seeing, but
why do we have that view of ourselves? Like so other people can see so much like brilliance in us, but when we look at ourselves, we're like, it's just normal.
And that's, I think we have exposure to it. We have day-to-day exposure to it. It's our normality. Same way as we have someone, we might look up a bit and be like, this is my day-to-day. They do this every day. It's the normality, you know. Also, we're hard on ourselves. We have to be. If no one else is, like, you have to be. And so, like, people get, I guess, a bit kind of caught up in the whole, like, I'm doing this, and this, and they love and revel kind of in people's praise for them as well, and put them on a pedestal. Like, you can't be doing that.
I had this discussion with my partner the other day. She was saying, you're being negative about yourself, right? And she sees it as a bad thing, right? Like it's bad for mindfulness. It's bad for, you know, all the cells in your body to be thinking and a lot of people think the same thing. Like I know a lot of like health coaches or mindfulness coaches.
Yeah.
They say you should only say positive things about yourself, you know, to amp yourself up and to believe in all these things. But I don't think people understand that and I think you are the same as I am. When we are negative about ourselves, we use that as a fuel to be like, I need to be a little bit better.
Yeah.
Not to say we're shit and then not do anything about it.
Yeah.
We say we're crap at this so that we can get better.
Yeah.
And we can work hard to get better so that we can say we're not crap at it anymore. And then you go on to the next thing. But it's not to put ourselves down. It's rather to say, you know, there's a certain standard that you should be at. Go and get that. Be that overachiever just for that little thing.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I was trying to squat the other day, and in between my sets, I'm like, you're lazy, you're fat. Like, this is slow.
As motivation.
Yeah, and it is because I know where I could be.
Yeah.
And I know that presenting into that session with probably the mood and the headspace was a bit like it's lethargic, and it all came from where my mind was at. And there's I'm not going to sit there and tell myself that I'm doing well, because I'm simply not. I've done better. And there's that's kind of a way, and it gives you a bit of an adrenaline response as well. And I've always kind of maintained, I've always used it, that like your perfect focal point is a medium between anger and happiness. And if you can get angry enough to stimulate, it's called an inverted U theory, arousal and performance within psych. But angry enough adrenaline, however the hell you're doing it, to a peak of that inverted you. And then you moderate it by being like, you know what, well, now we're good, you know, gracious, gratitude, and we kind of use this dopamine to center it a bit more. And that's kind of where you want to be. If your arousal levels are too high, anger is too high, aggression is too high, then performance starts to drop. We become sloppy, we become messy. We miss things. But and you can kind of mediate that with like, yeah, I might tell myself I'm lazy and this and that, or like it's not good enough and you've done better. But I also moderate it with like, well, we're here doing it now. We have an opportunity to do it now. Go do it. And they're very focused thoughts and calculated thoughts for a specific outcome. Granted, if you're telling yourself you're terrible and you're playing a whole victim line and a victim statement, I think that's see you later. You're going to stay there. Whereas if you're in a position of, hey, I know where I can be, you're not playing the victim, you're just being honest.
Yes.
And being honest to yourself, then you're in a much better position. But
you explained that so much better than I did. Shit.
I think our partners will always be the ones who bring that up and support that. They don't want to see you beat yourself up because they can see how much stress you're putting on yourself, and they're good mediators for you to sometimes take a step back and to a bit of an objective opinion. Sometimes it's a bit glorified, sometimes it's a bit too much of a pedestal, and I guess you have to understand the importance you play in their life as they play in yours as well, you know. And we're obviously, you're working together, but sometimes it's needed, sometimes it's not. I'm pretty harsh, to be honest, and my partner probably cops me being pretty blunt when I say like point blank, it's not good enough. And she probably struggles with that a bit, and I should probably check myself on that.
So you need a bit more female energy in you.
Yeah,
you got a lot of the masculine protector.
Yeah, I'm pretty blunt to say the least. And sometimes I'm just we'll be together, and in my head I'm roasting myself about I need to do this, I need to do that. And we'll be on a date option. We'll be watching a movie and I'll be sitting there. Actually, we're watching a movie, and it was 1 week before we're running a deadlift comp for Monash Children's Hospital fundraiser. And 1 week before we're watching this movie, and we're sitting in the movie. I can't remember what movie we're watching because I'm sitting there and it's dead quiet, and I'm thinking like, I'm gonna pull 250 kilos. Like, you're not pulling 250. you're not good enough. And that was just over and over my head.
And she's crying because the guy just gave her a rose in the movie.
She could be. I wouldn't have even known. I was just sitting there, and I think we got out of that movie, and Christina had asked what was up, and in my head I'm still turning over, like just picturing what 250 looks like, standing up tall with it, and that just continued on for the next week. That's all that. It's an obsessive thought.
That's what makes a world-class lifter or you know, or world-class anything. It's just that obsession.
And you have to be. There's a not so young, but a guy, Ethan, and his brother Dean, our coach, and he was in Paris fighting, and privileged to coach him. He's one of my best mates as well, but we bounce off one another with that, because that obsession is something there. And the class and the poise and the focus that he brings, especially when we're pulling it apart before he went to Paris, like last 2 months we just watched his character just build resilience, and watching his brother Dean be built up as well, and you're watching these mental shifts. But that's what it has to be. If you have a goal, it has to kind of be laser focused with a team behind you that support you. Have to pick up things that you miss or need help with, and that's what really works. But the kid's going for the Olympics this year for karate, and no doubt you can see it in his eyes that he'll do it. And you kind of have to go in and accept all your fears and spend time with them and address them, and then come out of it and also be, well, I'm still going and doing this, no matter how it makes me feel, no matter how challenging, no matter how hard it is. You still have to go and do that, and that always comes from a good reason why. It comes from a drive, and you know, sometimes it's very hard to come back to reality and to normal life with other people who don't have those expectations, and because you're simply in your own other world.
Just have to switch.
Yeah,
that's the biggest key. If you can learn that, you've got it.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, and I don't think you always need to switch. You need people who understand that. And,
yes.
And there's, you can have environments that don't understand that, and you can feel very odd. And I don't think that's a bad thing. You can feel very isolated and alone, and I really don't think that's a bad thing at all. But funnily enough, your environment usually models to fit these goals you want to achieve. And they say it, like, you look at the 5 people around you, that's usually what you're going to be. You're going to be the 6. And there's an aggregate of the 6. And I look at people in my life and who sit there, and there's things that those people do extremely well that I can learn off and want to be around. And hopefully something I bring back onto the table as well for them. So, and I said it as the same before with Andrew, like, Andrew was working like 80 to 100 hour weeks, week after week, and I was watching that, just being like, how the fuck is he doing this? Like, this is nuts.
Yeah.
And
that's crazy.
Yeah, and but at that time, like, we'll go in and train in at 10:30 p.m. and then we'll be pick him up again at 6 a.m. in the morning, and we'd go have a brekkie meeting, or I'd go into the office, he'd go to work, and I would do it again that night. And it was just someone who liked to work the way I like to work, and I love training with him. Because he could work hard.
Yeah,
and it pushed me. And that's now my environment again.
How do you juggle that? How do you juggle everything you're doing plus a relationship with your partner?
It's taken a lot of work.
Yeah,
it's a failed attempts. Yeah, so
it's worth. Like, when you know it's worth it, you do whatever it takes.
Yeah, and that's something I've had to learn as well. Because when you can put the kind of the blinkers on and just go straight forward, then learning how to objectively look at it and be like, well, maybe I've made a mistake here. I'm quite stubborn, and as I said, I'm quite blunt, but having to actually review the fact and be like, well, I can do this better here, has taken a lot of work. And actually went and worked with someone when I had to as well, and it taught me a lot, another mentor, and I really made me review things and look at everything that I've mucked up and everything that I could have done better. And that's something I've had to learn over I think I'm still learning, to be honest. And communication is probably the biggest thing. And having those tough conversations as well, instead of dancing around them and avoiding them, like having the I guess communicating. I wasn't very good at communicating what was on in my head, because I like to keep it to myself.
Because do you feel it's too complex to explain?
Yeah, and it frustrates me that I haven't always got answers to it. So the last thing I want to do is put it out on paper, or put it out into the air for someone who probably wants to try and help you with it, and you don't really want help on that. It's my shit to solve. So there's that's probably the next thing. Like sometimes you want to kind of pull away because you're handling all this stress, and a partner wants to provide you aid. Just if they're under stress, you want to provide aid, but you can't always provide it. You can't go in wanting to fix someone because they're not broken at the start. It's just something they have to manage. So
and I feel like you're not the kind of person that just needs to talk about it just for the sake of getting it out.
No.
Like, you need answers.
Yeah, it keeps me up at night.
Yeah,
I have to do things about it. There's talking about it it provides a means to an end, or to work out where that end is. But often I already know where that end is, or I have people who help me find that end. And it's always action that's going to be the thing to do. You got to roll your sleeves up.
Yeah.
If you're in a bad space or someone's in a bad space, the only thing to do is to do it. So there's also that as well. Like, why give the stress to someone else when the only person who can change it is myself. And which is something that I guess you have to learn.
Yeah, that's a solid point.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't want to burden anyone else.
Yeah.
But that's what relationships are. Like, when you're, say, with your partner, like, would you accept if she didn't want to burden you?
No, and that's exactly. It's ironic. run a social enterprise that is trying to open the doors to talk, you know, and then you yourself don't want to do it. It's very ironic. So that's something I've had to get a bit better at doing, and I think I'm still learning how to do that, because often the time, well, if you don't voice it, then how they're going to even know that there's something going on, you know?
Yeah.
So
I have a friend of mine who's going through a divorce. She's at the later stages of the divorce, and she told me like the key to a relationship is just communication. Like it doesn't matter how much you think it's going to burden someone else, like just get it off your chest if it's burning you inside, or even if it's just a small thing, like get it out before it becomes a big thing.
Yeah.
And she said like so clearly that is the key.
Yeah. And I honestly think that's 100% correct on that.
Because you find out a lot by telling people your thoughts. You find out whether they understand you or not.
Yeah.
And if they don't understand you, are they willing to learn to understand you?
And that's it's a whole test, right? And then you understand common interest as well. You understand where this person can help you as well. And I guess I've definitely been naive in the past of being like, I'm the only one who can fix my shit, because, you know, other people are going to bring things to the table that you don't have. So communication is huge. Communication and trust. It doesn't work without trust.
I agree.
Yeah, there's if there's no trust in a relationship, within any relationship, then it's so superficial.
That's true. I learned that in relationships, and I learned that in business relationships as well.
Yeah.
I read once, I think what triggered me to realize trust was a massive thing in business. I already knew that, but the big thing was someone said, let's go play golf. And then they said, why golf? And they said, because you get to see if the other person cheats or not.
Yeah.
Like the other person writes a different, you know. Yeah. So that's the purpose of playing these golf meetings.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that makes so much sense. Like if someone wants to cheat on a small thing, like they're going to cheat you on a big thing.
And it's actually I've always maintained what someone does on the big scale is cool, great, it might look good, but the collection of small things is actually what shows someone's character.
Yeah.
If someone's willing to lie about something, someone's willing to cheat, if someone's has all these things that we kind of condemn and shouldn't condone at all, or they have no substance behind words, then on small things they're never going to have it on big things. If anything, they just cover it up. So it's a really good kind of character assessment and where someone sits. It's how you gauge it within all relationships. And you can model it as well. I think we always have a responsibility to. Some people don't know, or they haven't been taught. They haven't had good mentors in their life, or good coaches, or whoever that plays that role to teach that maybe this isn't appropriate. You know, so you should honestly voice it. That's where communication comes in. You know.
So do you think in that respect, where you look at what people do on a smaller scale, do you think that in any regard, whether it's a relationship or business, do you think a cheater do you believe in that once a cheater, always a cheater? Or like once a shit business person, always a shit business person? Or do you think people can change?
I think people have the capacity to change. Whether they want to is a different thing.
Yeah.
And whether they have a need to is a different thing. But I think everyone has a capacity to change, because if you provide enough trauma, it's like conditioning and unconditioning, Pavlov's theory, right? There's where it's deemed that action isn't correct and it's affected them to an extent where it's actually provided them trauma, you know, from their action. Then they may not do it again. You know, if there is a repercussions or consequences that are to a scale enough to teach them not to do it again, then they're probably still going to do it. So that's, I think you can mediate that. There's a fine line to mediate that. People can change. Depends if they're willing to, or depends if you give them a reason to.
Where do you sit on that trauma thing? So someone does an action, and then they get a little bit of trauma from that, or they receive trauma. And if they do that action again, right? Is that just becoming a pattern of self-sabotage, or is that did they learn nothing, or what's your view on that? Because I think that's something you'd be dealing with quite a lot, right?
Yeah. Not too much. I think I've seen more of that personally than professionally. But I think there's two facets to that. There's one, you have people who are self-destructive and they enjoy putting themselves in a self-destructive stage, almost like subconscious reaction, and they'll go and carry that out, or they enjoy the drama of it, and it's almost similar to trauma addiction, where that you get this whole stimulus of hormones and neurochemicals that come from a stressful situation. Some people enjoy that; they love the drama,
Right.
you know, and that sustains them. So there is the self-destructive side where people can be self-destructive and enjoy the I guess the influx of neurochemicals that come from that environment. The second part of that is if someone goes and does an action and there's a consequence to it, but that consequence isn't enough, or it didn't affect them to a point where the next action they do is going to benefit them more, then of course they're going to probably go do it again. They'll make the same mistake twice. And I think that's a very good assessment of someone's will, someone's moral value and integrity. And that's probably someone that, if you look at the history and their developmental years, a lot of the foundations of them as a child have lacked within integrity, within their moral compass, within what we call conscientiousness, and this. I guess there's another other personality style of that where you have narcissism that come into that, which is the opposite of conscientiousness. Then that the facets of that trait come into play for that person. Now, how you go and deal with that, and if someone's provided trauma, let's say if they have lost, then maybe it shifts their whole moral compass. You know, as we grow older, we have things get taken away from us, and sometimes that can shift our very being. And whether it's in loss, whether it's from grief, you know, there's always consequences to actions. Whether that changes someone's depends on the scale, and that's. I've seen that personally where people made some very poor choices, very detrimental choices, and then realized the actual recall, and they've had the recall happen to them, and suddenly they're a different person.
What's like, if you want to share, you don't have to, but something that's been so traumatic that it's changed the pathway of someone?
I'm very open with that. I'd actually look at my relationship probably with my old man, to be perfectly honest with you. There's growing up with, I guess the degree of actions he held while we grew up were definitely shaped me with who I am now. And if anything, I used to say to make a good character, I'll do the opposite of what he did. Growing up, that's how I kind of looked at it. Now, the consequence of that was, for a period of time, he pretty much lost his son, and I didn't have contact with him, or had very limited contact with him. We had very turbulent contact if we did, and that's kind of shaped from then when he looks at how his relationship with my brother and his relationship with my sister is very different to how his relationship with myself was. And
really?
Yeah, very different.
Are you the oldest?
Yeah. And by 5 years from my brother.
What do you think that was?
We grew up in a very volatile household, and I think the scale of his reactions were based off trauma in his own life, and things that he wasn't dealing with in his own life. My parents separated when I was 7, and look at that time, things were kicking off in that household pretty violently and pretty disturbingly, and that.
When they divorced, how old were you?
7. Yeah. 7.5. They separated when I was about 6.5.
Yeah.
So
that's a young age.
Yeah.
To have to deal with that.
Yeah. And I don't think that the turbulence settled really between my old man. I can't speak for my brother, but my old man and I until I was about 17, 18, and then I'd pretty much cut contact. I was there. I'd see him maybe a couple of times a year. And just really because I wanted to see my sister in that setting, be there for a birthday, be there for Easter, be there for Christmas, and I kind of engrossed in my own thing by that point as well. And there's still a relationship there, but it wasn't a relationship that a father and son should have to that extent. And that I've seen his pain from what happens when you start realizing that. Well, just as he'd pulled away from his parents, his son was doing that to him.
Yeah.
And that's the consequence of it, right? You know, you make actions whether you understand what those actions were or not. There's still a consequence, and someone's hurting. And it took him a while to realize that. And then it was actually last year we were in Japan together, and My brother we were all there, but kind of we hadn't lived in the same house or same place since I was really, for that amount of time, since I was 6 years old. So obviously things were going to kick off, and things definitely did. And I reckon I cut contact with him after that for a good, at least no contact, declining calls, everything, wanted nothing to do with that until for however long, maybe 5 months, almost 6. And then actually going in, and when we did have the conversation and being like, if you want to actually understand where I'm at, then you can understand all the actions that you've done. And I kind of brought up from when I was a kid, and everything they say, what the 10 to 20% max of what you've actually done, and brought up all the mistakes I'd made, and some trouble I'd been in, and growing up, and what that actually meant, and where that put me mentally, where it put me physically, and seeing, going to someone, instead of I wasn't going and asking for apology. That's the last thing I wanted, but just simply like stating that this is, if you want to understand, listen, like sit there and understand.
How do you take it?
Probably hit him like in the face pretty hard.
Because he wasn't seeing what was happening in that relationship.
And the end of that conversation, we gone for about an hour and a half, was why didn't you call me? Why didn't you ask? And you can see that there's still this instinct for, I want to be protective of my son, when realistically you cause most of the trauma that he's coming through, right? And
because if you said that that's how he grew up, then that's all he knew. He thinks that's the right way to raise a child.
And there's I guess there's a lot of moments when you start realizing, well, maybe that's not the right way, you know. And we've been turbulent within our whole relationship, and the degree which he has with my brother and the degree the relationship he has with my sister is very different to what.
Does that make you feel like, why do they get that father, and why didn't I get that father?
There's I think at times, I'd be lying if I didn't have that thought at times, but the way I look at it, and I've said it before, is that what I was probably envious of when I was a child, other people can be a bit envious of what I have now. And it changes.
You wouldn't be the person.
It changes who you are completely. And although I would never wish that on anyone, with what we grew up with, and what certain experiences that have happened from young, I would never change what happened to myself. And that's something that I look at it. There's a reason why I can go understand someone who's on the point of life or ready to jump. There's a reason why I can understand someone coming from a domestic violence background, and there's a reason why I can understand other people who are going through trauma, and poor coping mechanisms, because the majority of the time I've been there or experienced it, and seen the backlash of that. So and that's, I guess, coming back to a whole purpose thing of whether it be with weights and mates or even personal conversations. Like, you find for little traumas that you have and things that you experience, there is always a piece of that puzzle that can be placed somewhere else, even if it's not in your own puzzle, and it can help someone else within that regard, and it can break down doors and open up, I guess, a first aid kit for someone who really needs it. So that's the context of that relationship and everything that's happened. Bloody grateful for, because it teaches you.
Do you feel that? How do you feel moving forward, having kids, when you eventually do have kids, or if you have kids? Are you scared that that your dad might come out in you?
I think that's always been something. It's probably one of my biggest fears in life, to be honest. And I think I've done enough work to make sure that would never happen. And there's the whole concept of what makes up our personality. We have genetic influences, and then we have environmental influences, and it says 51% is genetic and it says 49% is environmental. And I wholeheartedly believe I've used every inch of that 49%. And there's definitely good qualities within that genetic compound, right? But you do acknowledge certain traits that you have. And I love kids. I can't wait to have them.
You're gonna be a good dad.
I appreciate that. But there's, I look at things that I have in my life, and I'm like, okay, this is what I would do. This is how I would actually teach or coach or stand next to him and even reprimand as well. There's certain ways to do it, and it doesn't have to be violently. So there's things that I've learned. Someone has to break that cycle. Because if you don't break that cycle, then it's just generational trauma. It just repeats over and over again. I definitely, it's something that keeps you in check as well. Don't be like your old man. Most sobering thought in the world, you know.
Well, my friend said once to me, the key to the generations and getting better is that you only have to be a little bit better than your parents.
Yeah.
If you can do that, if you can be way better than your parents, good. But you only have to be a little bit better. Make a little bit more money, you know, love your kids just a little bit more, you know, just be a better person, better than your parents were. And I think that's how you progress over the years, generations.
Yes. And
because I mean, it's hard for people that came from traumatic backgrounds, like their parents and their parents and their parents. They were just trying to be a little bit better than their parents.
And that's the thing, right? There's people go through some absolute ringer with things they're born into, and that's not something they can control. But you're exactly right. That's one thing they can control is just being a little bit better, you know, and in whatever avenue that is. You don't have to be the most successful, whatever whole kind of Slumdog Millionaire story, right? You don't have to be that. It's nice, but there's like it can come about in just the smallest of things, you know. And that's one aspect that I think a lot of people neglect. Because to be fair, yes, my old man made a lot of mistakes. Whether he admits all of them, that's up to him. But he's pulled his head in and it changed and actually done a very good job with other things in his life. And I look at my mum and what she's done in her life. If I could be half of that, bloody hell, I'd be very happy. And there's so the things that you can control and model off, and if you don't have them, you can create it. If you don't know how to do it, you can learn. I agree.
Keep your head up and get shit done.
Yeah, always.
Dude, on that note, let's wrap this up.
Perfect.
Dude, thank you so much for doing this with me, man. It's always a pleasure to sit and chat with you.
Yeah.
Usually we're having coffees, but this time we're drinking kombucha.
Yeah.
Are we?
Healthy.
If you guys want to sponsor us, you can.
Little plug
to our 20 million followers.
Yeah.
Dude, thank you so much, man.
Absolutely.
I appreciate it. Hopefully we can get you back here again and do this again.
I think this is our catch-up sneak.
For sure. Done.
Good man.
All right, we're out.